I think the desire to understand and make sense of our world is really natural. In fact, I see it with my two young children every day. My son is one and is filled with curiosity and interest and gets so excited as he starts to make sense of the world and better understand what's happening around him. And my daughter, who is 4, similarly has tons of questions and curiosity that I seek to promote. She also thinks she has a lot of answers and is not hesitant at all to tell me and anyone about those. And yet, I want to encourage it. I want to support this real earnestness and interest to make sense of the world, to better understand ourselves and all that's happening around us. Because I think this is the roots of psychological maturation as we find what is true for us, to make sense, to know that what are my answers and what are the ways that I can solve problems? How do I realize my goals? And I think this leads to the outcomes of being healthier, happier, more harmonious, more thriving, all the things that we're wanting for ourselves. However, I think we've lost sight of the fact that what is true for us doesn't mean it's true for others. And right now, across the globe, we see people fighting about who has the right answer, who is right. And it just causes further division and separation, anger and outrage, intolerance and conflict and violence. So clearly, something isn't working. And I think it's time to step back and say, is there not maybe a better and different way to do this? And in fact, I think there is. And instead of getting stuck in the disagreements about who's right and what are the answers, let's connect around the questions. Because fundamentally, that's what I think life is all about. Exploring these bigger, deeper spiritual questions that every one of us must navigate as part of being human. And that is, who are we? How do we live? What causes our suffering? And if we were to come together with others to listen, ask, and share around what are the questions and how best do we live these, then all of a sudden I think there starts to be greater connection and harmony, respect and tolerance and support. So many of the things that we're wanting in the world is lacking. And I also think that there's guidance around us, not just for how to ask the questions, but how best to live in these contexts of the world that we all share, whether we're human or nature, more than human alike. And that is, how do we live the questions of uncertainty and complexity, interconnectedness and change? And the natural world, I think, is continually showing paths for us to do this. And that is at the heart of EcoPsychology and ecospirituality and what we're trying to do at the EcoPsychology Initiative. It's not suggesting that I or we have the answers and you need to follow us, as opposed to trying to share better ways to think about, ask, and live these questions, and finding inspiration from the natural world and how it does this, because it has been thriving and healing and regenerative since the beginnings of time with its organisms and ecosystems. So as we move forward, let's set aside who's right, who's wrong, what are the answers, and let's come together to ask and get curious about the questions that we need to be thinking about and exploring with each other and on our own. And not just connecting around the questions, but connecting around how do we live the questions, because that is the great path and spiritual quest of everyone's lives. And in this way, I think that the natural world has some answers, or maybe said differently, it has some ways that we can get curious about and integrate into our lives, which is why at EPI we say, nature knows the way. So moving forward, may you find your own questions that are best help you move forward for engaging and living your lives, and come together and connect with others, setting aside what is right. And in that way, as one of my teachers said, Dennis, the questions are often more important than the answers. And if we do this well, I think we end up with the outcomes that Rilke spoke about. We live our way into the answers. So be well, ask good questions, and remember, nature knows the way.